Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is the Piracy Show. Now, on today's show, of course, we're going to be taking on the issue of the Vanguard. And we're going to be kind of looking at this problem from a few different perspectives. And I've done a lot of research. I've been digging through all kinds of ships. I've been looking at ship stats. I mean, tons of stuff. I've been looking at way more ship stuff than I really intended to. But I really think that the problems with the Vanguard stem, I think, largely from the approach that came to designing the Vanguard. And I'm not talking about the artistic approach. I'm talking about the actual functional approach. And I think it's overall one of the problems that exists with how CIG goes about designing ships for Star Citizen. Now, if you look at the original concept art, a lot of people are in love with the original concept art, and a lot of people are just like, hey, I want that ship. And at first glance, it looks like a great ship, but then as the ship, of course, migrates into the game, there are issues. Now, one of the big issues with the ship is its size. It's a very, very big ship. It's a very easy target to hit. You can't really miss it. That combined with its low speed makes it a very problematic ship. So you might look at it and say, well, it's an A10 really. It's kind of like a space A10. That's what it is. That's what its role is. So, for taking on heavily armored targets, yada yada yada, things of that nature. But the problem is it's armed like a fighter. And if you look at, say, medium-sized ships, and I'm talking about like Freelancer Base, Freelancer Miss, all the way up to the Redeemer, the Constellation. Well, we could talk about the Constellation, but the Constellation is almost double the weight of the Vanguard. So, well, various models of the Constellation. So, the Constellation would probably lack maneuverability, so the Vanguard could possibly be competitive with the Connie in certain regards. But when we're talking about the Connie, like the base Connie costs $150. The Vanguard is $100 more than that. A decently equipped Connie is still $225. $25 less than the Vanguard, and that becomes one of the other problems. Is the price of the Vanguard makes no sense because the Vanguard really isn't competitive. The Freelancer base, the base Freelancer that costs $110, outguns the Vanguard. And those 4 forward size 4 guns on the Freelancer base are gimbaled. Whereas the 4 forward guns on the Vanguard are fixed. Freelancer Miss easily outguns the Vanguard. And it's got a missile reloading system. These missiles on the Vanguard, once you fire them, that's it, they're gone. Freelancer Miss can just keep auto-loading missiles out of its cargo bay and out onto its wings and go again. Plus, it's got 4 size 4, possibly even size 5 guns that you can put on either side of, the cockpit or the main hull. Freelancers are, great value for the money, and this is kind of one of the problems, is the Freelancer is actually a brilliant piece of work. I always kind of dislike the Freelancers because of their appearance, but looking at the stats and looking at what you get for the dollars that you spend, the Freelancer is insane value right now. Freelancer is a great ship, a fantastic ship, but it was kind of always a bare bones approach. It's a cargo ship, and it's a ship designed to basically do the job, but it does the job so well that it in effect outguns the Vanguard at the same time. The Freelancer Miss is a militia ship. It's a cargo ship that has been repurposed as a militia ship, and it's better than a purpose-built weapon of war, being the Vanguard. And that really, I think, is where the Vanguard went wrong. And I don't it's not a problem with the artist. It's a problem with the concept, with the idea of the Vanguard, is that it doesn't make sense as a weapon of war. It doesn't. The Redeemer makes sense as a weapon of war. I mean, it's meant to carry troops into combat. It's got turrets on the bottom and on the top. It's got strong shields. It's got a weapon loadout that completely blows the Vanguard out of the water. I mean, like, the Redeemer has 2 size 3 guns, 4 size 4 guns, and 4 more size 3 guns in the turrets, along with 10 size 2 missiles. It's no contest. It's almost, depending on how you want to assess the firepower, it's almost double the firepower of the Vanguard. It's ridiculous. And the Vanguard, its problem is that when people were kind of coming up with the idea with this ship, people were thinking, okay, well, what do we want? Okay, well, we want a deep space heavy fighter. Originally, this was just the twin engine long range fighter, right? And then it became the twin engine deep space fighter, and then it became the twin engine deep space heavy fighter. But as a twin engine long range fighter, that's what a lot of people in the community wanted, because, you know, back in the day, when people were talking about a lot of these ships, you know, the questions that always came up was, how far can it go? Do you need a carrier to get it somewhere? Does it come with its own jump drive? You remember those days when we had to ask that with every ship? Does it come with a jump drive? Because we were always afraid, like, I don't just want to get stuck in one system or have to remove a component from my ship to add in a jump drive so that I can just get to the next system. And so we were always asking that, does it come with a jump drive? And things like that. And so when we got a twin engine long range fighter, we were just like, okay, great, this is what everyone wanted to hear. Now, you could have made like a ship for $170, $180 that could have been just almost, not in appearance, but basically like a twin engine friggin' Super Hornet, and people would have been satisfied with that. It didn't have to have, you know, a dinette slash kitchenette, 2-bed, you know, sort of Tokyo style condominium inside of it with a social space to, you know, to have adventures in, and, you know, all these little odds and ends and all these little doodads that got added onto the ship that just made it like this oversized thing. And when you look at it, there's no way to bring it up to par with $250 and keep it as a fighter, and there's no way to bring it up to $250 and make it a medium ship that has a role, because the Redeemer already does pretty much all these things better than the Vanguard does. Well, the Vanguard can also be a bomber, yeah, but you can buy a Retaliator right now. You can go get a Retaliator for less money than it costs for a Harbinger, and you've got a much more capable bomber. Well, the Vanguard can also do, you know, electronic warfare. So can the Herald. Like, where's the value? Is there so much more capability in the electronic warfare variant of the Vanguard that it would justify being just shy of triple the price of the Herald? I mean, do you really see that? And one thing about the Herald is supposed to be fast, like racer fast, straight line fast. So imagine if you're doing electronic warfare and you're really difficult to catch, that's a heck of a combination. Vanguard, not so much, because the Vanguard is slower almost universally than every fighter in the game. Every medium and light fighter is faster than this ship. So they're not really going to have that much of an issue catching this ship. And like, these are the most numerous ships in Star Citizen are going to be your light and your medium fighters, and they almost universally can outrun or at least outmaneuver this ship. So all the medium ships, even the cargo ships, can outgun it, and all the fighters can outrun it. What is it? And going back to what I was saying originally, I think that this ship is kind of, with so many other ships in Star Citizen, and there are so many great ships in Star Citizen, And this video is not intended to knock Star Citizen as a game, but what it is like what I'm trying to explain here is that this ship is the ultimate expression of the breakdown in the process of designing ships for Star Citizen. Now, other ships have kind of, they've still come out well, they've still done well, but whenever you hear about people designing ships and designing vessels for Star Citizen, you always hear people talking about the design language. What does the shape invoke? Does it remind you of this? Does it remind you of that? How does it look? The textures, the feels. Is the hull busy enough, or is it too busy? And there was a lot of these kinds of criticisms during the Next Great Starship. I mean, if you remember that, when they were criticizing ships. But see, the funny thing is a lot of those things are afterthoughts. They really don't matter, because if you're trying to create a universe that mimics sort of like a real universe, it would be like someone at Lockheed saying, okay, well, the US government just put out a tender for the next generation fighter, right? Let's just say that they did. And, all these head executives from all these, companies, Boeing, Lockheed, whoever, they're all being interviewed, and they say, hey, the new contract come out, so what are you guys doing to get set for that new contract for the new fighter? Oh, well, we've hired all the finest designers from Milan, Tokyo, London. We're flying them all in, and we're going to come up with a wonderful design language, and it's just going to speak to the it's going to invoke the emotions of adventure and deep space and la-di-da. No. No. Like, no one at General Dynamics is saying, now, does the Abrams invoke the right emotion? No one in Moscow saying, does the T90 really make me feel more Russian for driving T90? I don't know. It's not right. No one does this. No one designs weapons like this. Now, with some ships, yeah, they're more or less like a 300, an Avenger possibly in certain respects. These are kind of like, not strictly speaking, designed as weapons of war, so they can be a little bit more free and they can use their own design language. But with a ship like this, it's a weapon of war, so the first question should be, how does it do the job that it's going to do, and will it do that job? And this ship does not do that job. It's too big, it's too slow, it's undergunned, it's undershielded. I mean, even if when you look at the problem of the shields, it's got size 2 shields. Oh, don't worry, because they recover very quickly, and you just bring them right back up. So in the meantime, you're going to be taking a lot of damage. Oh, it's okay, it's got all kinds of redundant systems. But then think about that in the long term. You got to repair that ship. You got to fix that ship. And I don't know about you, but it's generally been my experience in life that the things that cost more money also cost more money to get repaired. It's not like someone buys a BMW and says, well, a new headlight's only going to cost me $50. I mean, I already spent so much on the car. No, of course not. Of course not. And, just when you look at the Vanguard in general, it really embodies the problem of people were designing for a look, for a feel, for an emotion. They wanted to have a social space inside of it. All these things, but no one ever actually sat down and said, does this make sense as a weapon of war? And it doesn't. It doesn't make sense as a fighter because it can't catch any fighters. It doesn't make sense as like a medium gunship / heavy fighter because everything outguns it. Cargo ships outgun this ship. Now, we can sit here and we can make jokes and we can beat up on this ship, but in the end, how do we fix it? How do we make the Vanguard a good ship? How do we make the Vanguard a ship that is not only good but is worth the price tag worth the money that has already been spent on this ship? Well, there's two ways that you go about it. One, speed it up, turn it into a boom and zoom fighter. Now, it still won't have the firepower to really seal the deal, so to speak, but in terms of as a bomber and as an e-warship, it will make a lot more sense because it'll be a little bit more evasive, and it won't be so much of, here I am, I'm dangerous, come kick me in the head because I fly like a brick. So speeding it up is a quick and easy way to kind of make it a little bit better. But if you really want to take it and make it a good fighter, a great fighter, something that when someone says $250 for that, yes please, that's where you want to go. So now we have to start thinking like we're actually designing a weapon of war. We have to start thinking like, you know, we're going to visit Lockheed or whatever, and we're actually, trying to pick something that makes sense. And so here's one of the things that you can do. Now, this is a more involved solution, and this takes a little bit more time. But we already know that they're very enamored with the 4 guns in the nose, and that, oddly enough, is like the one strong selling point of the ship, is that concentrated firepower. Well, let's keep that. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to, the gimbaled gun underneath, gimbaled size 4, fixed size 5, we're actually going to take the gimbal out of that equation. Hold on. We're going to take that gimbal out of the equation, and we're going to put 2 fixed size 5 guns underneath the nose. We're going to get rid of that gimbal, and we're going to instead exchange it with 2 size 5 guns. So now it's a little bit more of a danger to the cargo ships that used to outgun it. Now it starts to make sense in the medium realm a little bit more. Next, what we're going to do is with the 4 guns in the nose, we're actually going to replace that nose section, and we're going to use a nose section that looks something like this. This is the sensors on the nose of an Apache attack helicopter. Except instead of those sensors, we're going to fit 2 on each side, the 4 guns from the nose, and that's going to be a quad mount gimbal. So now the pilot is going to have those 4 guns on a gimbal so that he can go around and he can select smaller targets with those guns. He still won't be so overpowered as to be able to destroy them, but he will be able to hit them. He will be able to do damage with them. That will give him a competent set of gimbaled armaments that will actually start to bring the ship up to value, and then he'll still have his 2 fixed size 5s underneath to go after the bigger ships, making him a credible threat to those bigger ships. That is how, if you really want to fix the Vanguard, if you really want to make the Vanguard worth the $250 price tag, that's how you go about it. That's how you fix the ship up, and that's how you patch up some of the mistakes, and that's how you bring it into the realm of reality and make it into a ship that people go like, well, I don't know, into something that, yeah, no, I want that. That's how you make the Vanguard a really good ship. You think about it in terms of how do you use it as a weapon of war? What would a pilot find useful? What would a pilot find handy? And what would make sense within the lore? And those are 2 things that make sense, and that's what would make the ship a really good ship. So, we've knocked it down and we've built it back up. Now, when I make this video is once again not an attack on Star Citizen. This isn't an attack on CIG. What this is just trying to illustrate that, there are some ships that are good and there are some ships that are bad. And sometimes the ships that are bad are because a lot of the ideas that go behind them were just bad ideas. And I think that there's a lot of ships that have kind of been fixed up and patched up, but if you take a more military and pragmatic approach to designing a lot of ships, especially the military ships, the other ships, the 300s and whatnot, I mean, those are more or less like passenger cars in the universe. So you can have a design language, you can have artistic expression with those. But a lot of the ships that don't do that, a lot of the bare bones military ships are the ships that, when you look at a ship like the Gladiator totally makes sense. Super Hornet totally makes sense as a weapon of war. Saber makes sense as a weapon of war. But then the Vanguard, it doesn't. You know, it's. But with these changes, then the Vanguard all of a sudden does make sense. All of a sudden, it does become a good ship, and it becomes something that you would really want to have, because all of a sudden, all these little things all come together, and it all starts to make sense. And it just you have to take a military and pragmatic approach to designing ships, and you can't always say, does it speak to me? Does it invoke the right emotion? No, it should be, does it kill shit? And does it make me feel like a badass when I'm flying it and killing shit? And does it make other people afraid of me? Those are the questions that you have to ask when you're designing a weapon of war. And that in my opinion that's a quick fix to the Vanguard, and that's a more involved, better fix to the Vanguard. That's my opinion on the ship. Am I going to keep it? We'll see how things go. But realistically, I mean, the longer, more involved solution, I don't see that happening. I don't see them going with that, even though, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I would immediately invoke that idea if I worked at CIG. I'd be like, this is what you got to do. Go get her done. But once again, I don't work at CIG. So that is my opinion. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope the Vanguard fans out there, feelings aren't hurt over this. This is just my opinion once again. So your opinion of me might be that I'm an idiot, and you're perfectly welcome to think so. You wouldn't be the first one. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.